The great chamber of the Galactic Council was silent. 347 species sat in their designated seats, their various forms of eyes all focused on the central platform. Some had scales that shimmered under the artificial lights. Others had fur or feathers or skin that changed color with their emotions. A few existed as clouds of gas contained in special chambers, but they all shared one thing in common today. They were all afraid. Ambassador Zyxthon of the Valorian Collective rose from his seat. His tall, thin body moved with the grace of water flowing downhill. His silver skin caught the light as he lifted one of his 4 arms to request permission to speak. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Zyxthon," said the automated voice system. "We have been at this for 17 cycles," Zyxthon said. His translator implant converted his clicking language into the standard galactic tongue. 17 cycles of debate, 17 cycles of arguments, and we are no closer to a solution. Across the chamber, a massive creature shifted in its specially reinforced seat. Ambassador Grokter of the Korthan Empire let out a low rumble that made the floor vibrate. His species resembled what humans would call a cross between a bear and a rhinoceros, but 3 times the size. His dark red eyes fixed on the Valorian. "There is no solution to be found," Grokter said. His voice was like thunder in a cave. "The Valaxians have claimed the neutral zone. This is an act of war. We must respond with force." "Force will only bring more death," said another voice. This one belonged to Diplomat Serene of the Aquatic Consortium. She floated in a water-filled sphere that hovered near the ceiling. Her tentacles pressed against the glass as she spoke. "We have already lost millions to this conflict. And we will lose billions more if we do not act," Grokter replied. The chamber erupted into noise. Dozens of species began speaking at once. Some shouted in anger. Others tried to calm their neighbors. A few simply sat in silence, watching the chaos with expressions that might have been sadness or frustration or something that had no human name. In the far corner of the chamber, in a small section that had been added only 5 years ago, a group of 3 humans watched the scene unfold. Ambassador Sarah Chen sat in the center seat. Her dark hair was pulled back in a simple style. Her brown eyes moved slowly across the room, taking in every detail. On her left sat Marcus Cole, her chief advisor. On her right sat Dr. James Okonkwo, an expert in alien psychology. "They are going to vote for war," James said quietly. "The fear is too strong. They cannot see past it." Sarah nodded slowly. "The Korthan bloc has 43 votes. The Valorian coalition has 39. Neither side has enough to force their position, but together they have enough to deadlock any peaceful solution. And the neutral species are too scared to pick a side," Marcus added. "This is a mess." Sarah watched as Grokter slammed his massive fist against his desk. The sound echoed through the chamber like a gunshot. Several smaller species flinched away from the noise. "The Valaxians must be stopped," Grokter roared. "They have taken our trade routes, they have captured our ships, they have killed our people. If we do not strike now, they will grow stronger, they will take more, they will kill more. Is this what the Council wants? To sit and watch as an entire quadrant burns?" "We want peace," Zyxthon replied. His voice remained calm, but his skin had shifted to a pale blue, a sign of stress among his people. "But peace cannot be achieved through more violence." "Then how?" Grokter demanded. "Tell me, Valorian, you speak of peace, you speak of diplomacy, but the Valaxians do not want peace. They do not want diplomacy. They want conquest. They want power. How do you negotiate with those who only understand the language of war?" The chamber fell silent again. No one had an answer. The Valaxians were a mystery to most species in the galaxy. They had emerged from the dark spaces between stars only 20 years ago. No one knew where they came from. No one knew why they had suddenly begun their campaign of expansion. And no one knew how to stop them. Sarah leaned back in her seat. Her mind was working through the problem like a puzzle. She had read every report on the Valaxians. She had studied their attacks, their movements, their patterns. Something did not add up. "James," she said softly, "tell me again about the Valaxian communication attempts." James frowned. "There have been several. They broadcast on standard frequencies, but their language is unlike anything we have encountered. The translation AIs cannot decode it. Some experts believe it is not a language at all, just random noise." "Random noise," Sarah repeated. "But they broadcast it anyway. Why would they do that if they did not want to communicate?" "Perhaps it is a taunt," Marcus suggested. "A way to mock us for our inability to understand them." Sarah shook her head. "No, that does not fit the pattern. Look at their attacks. They strike quickly, take what they need, and retreat. They do not engage in prolonged combat. They do not seek to destroy, only to acquire." "What are you thinking?" James asked. Before Sarah could answer, another voice cut through the chamber. This one was sharp and cold, like ice cracking under pressure. "The council should stop wasting time on debate." The speaker was Ambassador Threlix of the Syndicate of Shadows. His species was small and dark, with eyes that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. They were known for their intelligence and their cruelty in equal measure. "The Syndicate has resources," Threlix continued. "We have weapons. We have soldiers. If the Council authorizes action, we can end the Valaxian threat within 2 cycles." "At what cost?" Sarene asked. Her tentacles had turned a deep purple, a sign of alarm. Threlix smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "War always has a cost. The question is whether you are willing to pay it." The chamber erupted again. This time the noise was louder, more aggressive. Species that had remained neutral began to choose sides. The balance was shifting, and it was shifting toward war. Sarah stood up. The movement was small, almost invisible in the chaos, but something about it caught the attention of the automated systems. A spotlight fell on her. The noise began to die down as species turned to look at this newcomer, this representative of a species that had only been part of the Council for 5 short years. "The Council recognizes Ambassador Chen of Earth," the system announced. 347 species stared at her, some with curiosity, some with dismissal, a few with open hostility. Humans were still new here, still unproven. What could they possibly have to offer? Sarah took a deep breath. The Council speaks of war, the Council speaks of peace, but the Council does not speak of understanding. Grokter let out a snort. "Understanding? What is there to understand? The Valaxians attack, we defend, it is simple." "Nothing is simple," Sarah replied. Her voice was steady, calm, not in the galaxy, not in politics, and certainly not in the hearts and minds of thinking beings. She paused, looking around the chamber. "The Valaxians broadcast signals we cannot decode. We assume this means they do not want to communicate. But what if we are wrong? What if they are trying to speak and we simply do not know how to listen?" The chamber was silent. Some species exchanged glances. Others simply stared at the human with expressions that ranged from confusion to interest. "What exactly are you proposing?" Zyxthon asked. Sarah smiled. It was a small smile, but it held something that many species in that chamber had never seen from a human before. It held hope. "I am proposing that before we choose war, we try something else. Something that my species has learned over thousands of years of conflict on our own world." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "I am proposing that we actually try to talk to them." The chamber exploded into noise once more. But this time, mixed in with the shouts of anger and dismissal, there were other sounds. Sounds of interest, sounds of curiosity, and perhaps, just perhaps, sounds of hope. The vote would come soon, and humanity was about to show the galaxy something it had never seen before. The private chamber was smaller than the main council hall, but it was no less impressive. Curved walls of polished metal reflected the soft blue light that filled the room. A circular table sat in the center, surrounded by seats of various sizes and shapes to accommodate different species. Sarah Chen sat at one end of the table. Across from her sat Ambassador Zyxthon. His silver skin had returned to its normal color, but his 4 eyes still watched her with careful attention. "You have caused quite a stir, Ambassador Chen," Zyxthon said. His voice was softer here, away from the noise of the main chamber. "Many species are talking about your proposal." "Talking is better than fighting," Sarah replied. "Perhaps, but talking will not stop the Velaxians from attacking. They have already taken 14 systems. Millions of beings have been displaced. Thousands have died." Zyxthon leaned forward. "I admire your optimism, Ambassador, but optimism alone will not solve this crisis." Sarah nodded. "You are right, optimism is not enough. That is why I am here speaking with you privately. I need your help." Zyxthon tilted his head, a gesture that his species used to express curiosity. "My help? The Valorian Collective has no special connection to the Velaxians. We know as little about them as anyone else." "But you do have something that most other species lack," Sarah said. "Your ships can travel through the deep space between stars. Your sensors can detect things that others cannot. And your people have been exploring the outer reaches of the galaxy for longer than most species have been part of the Council." Zyxthon was silent for a moment. His 4 eyes blinked in sequence, a sign that he was thinking deeply. "You want us to find where the Velaxians come from?" "Yes." "Why? What good will that do? Even if we locate their home system, that does not give us the ability to communicate with them." Sarah pulled a small device from her pocket. It was a data pad, simple and unremarkable. She placed it on the table and activated it. A holographic image appeared above the surface, showing a complex pattern of lines and shapes. "This is a recording of the last Velaxian broadcast," she said. "Our translation AIs say it is random noise, but I had my team analyze it differently. Instead of looking for language patterns, we looked for mathematical structures." Zyxthon studied the image. His silver skin began to shift toward a pale green, a sign of intense interest. "These are not random. These are sequences, Fibonacci patterns, prime number progressions." "Exactly," Sarah said. "The Velaxians are not speaking in words. They are speaking in mathematics, the universal language." "But mathematics cannot convey complex ideas," Zyxthon protested. "You cannot negotiate a treaty with equations." "Not alone, no, but mathematics can establish a foundation. It can prove that both sides are intelligent. It can show that both sides want to communicate." Sarah leaned forward. "Ambassador, the Velaxians have been screaming into the void, hoping someone would listen. And we have been ignoring them because we expected words instead of numbers." Zyxthon sat back in his chair. His 4 arms folded across his chest in a gesture that might have been contemplation or skepticism. "Even if you are right, there is still the matter of their attacks. They have killed beings. They have taken territory. How do you explain that?" "I have a theory," Sarah admitted. "But I need more information to confirm it. That is why I need your help. If we can find their home system, if we can observe them in their natural environment, we might be able to understand what they are really trying to do. And if your theory is wrong, if the Velaxians are simply conquerors, as most of the Council believes." Sarah met his gaze. "Then we will know for certain, and the Council can vote for war with clear conscience. But if I am right, if there is a chance for peace, is that not worth exploring?" The silence stretched between them. Zyxthon's eyes moved across the holographic display, studying the mathematical patterns. Finally, he let out a long, slow breath. "The Valorian Collective will provide a ship," he said. "One ship with a small crew. You will have access to our best sensors and our most experienced explorers. But I must warn you, Ambassador Chen, the deep space between stars is dangerous. Many ships have been lost in those regions." "I understand the risks," Sarah said. "Do you? Humans are still new to the galaxy. You have not seen what lies in the dark spaces. There are things out there that even the Valaxians fear." Sarah smiled. It was the same small smile she had shown in the council chamber. "Ambassador, my species has been exploring dangerous places since we first climbed down from the trees. We sailed across oceans we did not understand. We flew through skis we could not see. We traveled to our moon on rockets that might have killed us at any moment. Danger is not a reason for humans to stop. It is a reason for us to be more careful." Zyxthon made a sound that might have been a laugh. It was hard to tell with his species. "You are an interesting people, Ambassador Chen. I am beginning to understand why the council chose to admit you despite your youth." "We have our moments," Sarah said. She stood up from the table. The holographic display faded as she retrieved her data pad. "I will need to assemble a team. Specialists in communication, mathematics, psychology. This will not be a simple mission." "It will be the most important mission in recent galactic history," Zyxthon agreed. "If you succeed, you will have achieved something that no species has done in thousands of years. You will have prevented a war." "And if I fail?" Zyxthon's skin shifted to a dark blue, a sign of sadness among his people. "Then the galaxy will burn, and your species will be caught in the flames along with the rest of us." Sarah nodded. The weight of the task settled on her shoulders like a physical burden, but she did not let it show on her face. Humans had learned long ago that showing weakness in negotiations was never a good idea. "I will not fail," she said. As she walked out of the private chamber, she hoped that she was right. The next 3 days were a blur of activity. Sarah assembled her team from among the best minds that Earth had sent to the galactic community. Dr. James Okonkwo would handle the psychological analysis. Dr. Mei Ling, a mathematician from Beijing, would work on decoding the Valaxian signals. Marcus Cole would manage the logistics and security. But the most important addition to the team came from an unexpected source. "You want me to join your mission?" The speaker was a young Korthan named Vrek. Unlike the massive Ambassador Grokter, Vrek was relatively small for his species, only about twice the size of a human. His dark fur was streaked with white, a sign that he had seen many battles. "You served on the front lines against the Valaxians," Sarah said. "You have seen them up close. You have observed their tactics. That knowledge could be invaluable." Vrek's red eyes narrowed. "I have also lost friends to their attacks, good warriors who died defending their homes. You ask me to help you make peace with the beings who killed them." "I ask you to help me understand them," Sarah corrected. "Peace may not be possible, but if there is even a chance, should we not try?" Vrek was silent for a long moment. His massive hands clenched and unclenched, as if he was imagining them wrapped around a weapon. Finally, he let out a deep sigh. "My people have a saying," he said. "A true warrior fights not because he loves battle, but because he loves what lies behind him. My mate, my children, my home. They are what I fight for, and if talking can protect them better than fighting." He shook his head. "I will join your mission, Ambassador Chen, but I warn you, if this turns out to be a trap, I will not hesitate to defend our crew." "I would expect nothing less," Sarah said. The Valorian ship was called the Whisper of Stars. It was a sleek vessel, designed for deep space exploration. Its hull was coated with a special material that absorbed most forms of detection. Its engines were nearly silent, producing only the faintest vibration as they pushed the ship through the void. Captain Ginal of the Valorian Collective stood on the bridge as the human team came aboard. She was tall and silver-skinned like most of her species, but her eyes had a golden tint that was unusual among Valorians. "Welcome to my ship, Ambassador Chen," she said. Her voice was calm and measured. "I hope you understand the risk we are taking by making this journey." "I do," Sarah replied, "and I am grateful for your cooperation." "Cooperation is easy when the alternative is war," Ginal said. "I lost my mate in the first Valaxian attack. Part of me wants revenge, but a larger part wants to ensure that no one else loses what I lost." Sarah understood. Loss was something that connected all beings, regardless of their species or their world. It was a universal experience, as fundamental as breathing or sleeping. "We will do our best to find answers," Sarah promised. The Whisper of Stars launched from the Council Station and headed toward the deep space between stars. The journey would take several days, even at maximum speed. During that time, the team worked on their preparations. Dr. Mei Ling spent hours analyzing the Velaxian broadcasts. She found more mathematical patterns, including sequences that seemed to reference specific coordinates in space. These coordinates pointed to a region that no known species had explored, a dark patch of the galaxy where stars were rare and sensors often failed. "This could be their home," Mei Ling said, pointing at the coordinates on a holographic star map. "Or it could be a trap." "Everything could be a trap," Marcus replied. "That is what makes this interesting." Dr. James Okonkwo focused on the psychological aspect. He studied recordings of Velaxian ships in action, looking for patterns in their behavior. What he found surprised him. "They avoid killing when possible," he reported. "In most of their attacks, they disable ships and take cargo, but they leave the crews alive. The deaths that have occurred were mostly accidental or defensive." "That does not match the image of mindless conquerors," Sarah observed. "No, it does not. It suggests that they have a purpose beyond destruction. They are taking resources, yes, but they are not trying to eliminate other species." Vrek listened to these discussions with growing interest. His initial hostility began to fade as he heard the evidence. He was a warrior, yes, but he was not a fool. He could recognize when the facts did not support his assumptions. "If they are not conquerors," he said slowly, "then what are they?" Sarah looked at the holographic map, at the dark region where the coordinates pointed. "That is what we are going to find out." The Whisper of Stars continued its journey into the unknown. Behind them, the council waited and debated and prepared for war. Ahead of them lay either the greatest diplomatic achievement in galactic history or a disaster that would cost them all their lives. Sarah Chen stared at the stars and hoped that humanity's first major test on the galactic stage would not be its last. The Whisper of Stars dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the coordinates that Dr. Mei Ling had identified. The view outside the ship was unlike anything the crew had ever seen. Instead of the familiar backdrop of distant stars, they faced a wall of darkness. A massive cloud of dust and debris stretched across space, blocking the light from the stars beyond. Only a few faint points of red and orange light peeked through the blackness, ancient stars that were slowly dying. "The Veil," Captain Ginal said softly. "My people have stories about this place. They say it is where old stars go to die. They say nothing that enters ever returns." "Cheerful," Marcus muttered. Sarah studied the readings on the ship's sensors. The dust cloud was thick but not impenetrable. Their sensors could detect faint energy signatures coming from deeper within the veil. Something was in there, something alive. "Can we navigate through it?" she asked. Ginal nodded slowly. "The ship was designed for conditions like this, but our sensors will be limited. We will be flying partially blind." "Then we go slowly," Sarah decided, "and we keep broadcasting our mathematical signals. If the Velaxians are in there, we want them to know we are coming in peace." The ship moved forward, entering the edge of the dust cloud. The darkness closed in around them like a blanket. The viewports showed nothing but swirling particles and the occasional flash of static electricity. For 3 hours they traveled through the veil. The tension on the bridge was thick enough to cut with a knife. Every creak of the hull, every beep of the sensors made someone jump. Then, without warning, the dust began to thin. Patches of light appeared ahead, and as the ship emerged from the thickest part of the cloud, they saw something that made everyone stop and stare. A planet, A massive planet, larger than anything in the human solar system except for gas giants. But this was no gas giant. This was a rocky world, covered in structures that stretched across its surface like a net. Cities, roads, ports, signs of a civilization that had been building for thousands, perhaps millions of years. And around the planet, moving in perfect patterns, were hundreds of Velaxian ships. "They have seen us," Gynal reported. Her voice was carefully calm, but her silver skin had shifted to a pale blue. "Multiple ships are changing course. They will intercept us in approximately 4 minutes." "Hold position," Sarah ordered. "Continue broadcasting the mathematical signals. Add our standard greeting in all known languages." "They will not understand our languages," Vrek pointed out. "Maybe not, but the effort matters. It shows we are trying to communicate, not attack." The minutes stretched like hours. The Velaxian ships grew larger on the view screens. They were strange vessels, covered in spines and angles that did not seem to follow any practical design. Their surfaces shimmered with colors that shifted and changed, as if the ships themselves were alive. "Ambassador," Gynal said, "they are surrounding us. We are completely enclosed." Sarah nodded. She had expected this. "Open a channel, broadcast on all frequencies." The communication system hummed to life. Sarah took a deep breath and spoke. "This is Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth and the Galactic Council. We come in peace. We wish to communicate. We have studied your signals. We understand that you speak in mathematics. We are learning your language. We want to understand." Silence. The Velaxian ships held their positions, neither attacking nor retreating. Seconds passed, then a minute, then 2. Dr. Mei Ling suddenly sat up straight at her station. "We are receiving a signal. It is similar to their broadcast patterns but different, more structured." "Can you decode it?" Sarah asked. Mei Ling worked furiously at her console. Numbers and equations flashed across the screen. Her eyes widened. "They are asking a question, I think. The mathematical structure suggests interrogation." "What question?" "I am not sure, but one sequence keeps repeating. It translates roughly to purpose. Why, reason." Mei Ling looked up. "I think they are asking why we are here." Sarah thought quickly. How do you explain diplomatic intent using only mathematics? It seemed impossible. But then she remembered something from her childhood, a story her grandmother had told her about early human explorers who encountered tribes with no shared language. "Send them the Fibonacci sequence," she said. "Then send a sequence of our own creation. Then combine the 2 sequences into a new pattern." "Why?" Mei Ling asked. "Because it demonstrates cooperation. We take something of theirs. We offer something of ours. We combine them into something new. That is the essence of communication. That is the essence of peace." Mei Ling nodded and began working. The signal was sent. Again, they waited. This time, the response came faster. A new pattern appeared on the screen. It was complex, more complex than anything they had received before. Mei Ling studied it for several minutes, her face showing concentration and confusion in equal measure. "They are telling us something," she said finally. "But it is not words, it is a story, a history. They are showing us their past." The pattern was translated into images and sounds, as best as the computer could manage. What they saw made the entire crew fall silent. The Velaxians had not always lived in the Veil. Long ago, they had occupied a rich system at the heart of the galaxy. They had been a peaceful species, focused on science and art. They had never developed weapons or military tactics. Then the Syndicate of Shadows had come. The images showed dark ships descending on the Velaxian home world. They showed cities burning, populations being captured and enslaved. The few Velaxians who escaped fled into the deep spaces between stars, hiding in the Veil where no one would think to look for them. For thousands of years, they had survived in their hiding place. They had rebuilt their civilization. They had even begun to thrive. but they had never forgotten what had been taken from them. And now they were running out of resources. The dying stars of the veil could not sustain them forever. They needed materials that could only be found outside their sanctuary. So they had begun their expeditions into the wider galaxy, taking what they needed to survive. But they had not forgotten the Syndicate. They had not forgotten the cruelty they had suffered. Every time they ventured out, they expected to be attacked. Every ship they encountered was a potential enemy. They had no language to negotiate with because no one had ever tried to negotiate with them. They had only known violence. Until now. Sarah felt tears forming in her eyes. She did not try to hide them. Some emotions were universal. "They are refugees," she said softly. "They have been hiding here for thousands of years, afraid that if they revealed themselves they would be destroyed, and we have been treating them like monsters." Vrek made a low sound in his throat. It might have been anger or sadness or both. The Syndicate, they did this. They created the Valaxian threat by attacking them long ago. And now the Syndicate offers to solve the problem with more violence, James added. How convenient for them. Captain Ginal spoke quietly. "Ambassador, the Valaxian ships are changing formation. They are opening a path toward the planet." Sarah looked at the view screen. True enough, the Valaxian vessels had moved aside, creating a corridor that led directly to the massive world below. "They are inviting us to their home," Mei Ling said, wonder in her voice. "No outsider has ever been there. No one has ever been trusted enough." Sarah stood up. Her decision was clear. "Take us in, Captain. Let us meet them face to face." The whisper of stars descended toward the planet. As they drew closer, the structures on the surface became clearer. They were not buildings in the traditional sense. They were organic, grown rather than built. Crystal formations rose from the ground like trees. Pools of liquid light connected the structures like rivers. It was beautiful in a way that no human eye had ever seen. They landed on a platform that seemed to form just for them, the surface rising up to meet the ship like a hand reaching out to catch a falling bird. When the landing was complete, Sarah walked to the airlock. "Ambassador," Vrek said, stepping forward, "let me go first, if this is a trap." "It is not a trap," Sarah said with certainty she did not entirely feel. "But you may come with me if you wish. All of you may come. We are here to build bridges, not walls." The airlock opened. The air outside was cold and thin, but the ship had already confirmed it was breathable. Sarah stepped out onto the platform and looked at the world around her. Valaxians stood waiting for them. They were tall beings, taller than humans or Valorians. Their bodies were covered in crystalline structures that reflected the light of the dying stars above. Their faces, if they could be called faces, had no features that Sarah recognized, but she could feel something coming from them, a sense of welcome, a sense of hope. One of the Valaxians stepped forward. It raised a limb that might have been an arm and pointed at Sarah. A sound emerged from its body, a complex series of tones that the translator struggled to interpret. Finally, a word appeared on Sarah's display. "Friend." Sarah smiled. She raised her own hand and reached out toward the Valaxian. When their limbs touched, she felt a vibration run through her body. It was not unpleasant. It was almost like music. "Friend," she confirmed. The Valaxian made another sound. This time, the translator had an easier time. "We have waited long, very long for someone to listen." Sarah nodded. "We are here now, and we will listen, we will help. That is what friends do." The fate of the galaxy was about to change. And it was changing not through war or conquest, but through something far more powerful. Understanding. 3 weeks had passed since Sarah Chen and her team had made first contact with the Valaxians. In that time, they had learned more about the species than anyone in the galaxy had ever known. The Valaxians had opened their world to the visitors, sharing their history, their culture, and their struggles. The mathematical language that had seemed so alien at first became easier to understand with practice. Dr. Mei Ling developed a translation system that could convert Velaxian mathematics into rough approximations of words and sentences. It was not perfect, but it allowed for basic communication. More importantly, the Velaxians had shared the full truth of their situation. Their resources were nearly exhausted. The dying stars of the Veil could no longer provide the energy they needed. Their expeditions into the wider galaxy had been acts of desperation, not aggression. They did not want to take from others, Sarah explained during a communication with the Galactic Council. Her image was transmitted across the galaxy, visible to all 347 species. But they saw no other choice. They believed that the galaxy would destroy them if they revealed themselves. The attack by the Syndicate of Shadows thousands of years ago left wounds that never healed. The council chamber was silent as she spoke. Even Ambassador Grokter of the Korthan Empire listened without interruption. "We have an opportunity here," Sarah continued. "An opportunity to right an ancient wrong. The Velaxians are not our enemies. They are refugees, survivors of a genocide that happened before most of our species even developed space travel. They need our help, and in return, they offer something valuable." "What could they possibly offer?" demanded Ambassador Threlix of the Syndicate of Shadows. His dark eyes gleamed with poorly hidden hostility. "They are primitives hiding in a dust cloud. They have nothing that interests the Syndicate." Sarah smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "They have knowledge, Ambassador. Thousands of years of scientific development, focused on sustainability and harmony with their environment. They have developed technologies that could benefit every species in the Council. Energy systems that do not deplete. Food production that requires no land or water. Medical techniques that can treat conditions we do not even have names for." The murmuring began. Species exchanged glances. Even the most skeptical representatives began to show interest. "And they are willing to share this knowledge?" asked Ambassador Zyxthon. "Freely, in exchange for what any being deserves, a place in the galaxy, protection from those who would harm them, the right to exist without fear." The chamber erupted into debate. Factions formed and reformed. Species that had been calling for war began to reconsider. Others demanded proof of the Velaxian claims. A few, led by the Syndicate, continued to argue for military action. But the tide was turning. Sarah could feel it. The fear that had dominated the Council was being replaced by something else: curiosity, hope, the possibility of a future that did not involve death and destruction. When the vote came, it was not even close. 293 species voted in favor of peaceful integration. 42 voted against. 12 abstained. The Velaxians would be welcomed into the galactic community. But the Syndicate of Shadows did not accept defeat gracefully. 3 days after the vote, as the Whisper of Stars prepared to escort the first Velaxian diplomatic ship back to the Council, alarms began blaring throughout the vessel. "Multiple contacts emerging from faster than light," Captain Ginal reported. Her voice was steady, but her silver skin had shifted to a deep blue. "Syndicate signatures, 12. No, 18 ships. They are taking attack formation." Sarah rushed to the bridge. Through the viewports, she could see the Syndicate vessels materializing from the darkness. They were smaller than the Whisper of Stars, but they were built for war. Weapons ports lined their hulls. Their engines glowed with the red light of military-grade power cores. "They would not dare," Marcus said. "This would be an act of war against the entire Council." "The Syndicate has always believed that strength makes right," Vrek replied. His massive hands were clenched into fists. "They think they can destroy us and the Velaxians before anyone knows what happened. With no witnesses, they can claim we were attacked by hostile forces." "Open a channel," Sarah ordered. "Broadcast on all frequencies, including the emergency council band." "Done," Ginal confirmed. "Syndicate vessels, this is Ambassador Sarah Chen of Earth. You are committing an act of aggression against protected diplomatic ships. The Galactic Council is monitoring this transmission. Stand down immediately." Static filled the channel, then a familiar voice responded, "Ambassador Threlix." "Ambassador Chen, how unfortunate that you are here. We had hoped to deal with the Velaxian threat quietly, but now you have witnessed too much. You have interfered in matters beyond your understanding." "I understand perfectly," Sarah replied. "You attacked the Velaxians thousands of years ago. You drove them into hiding. And now that they might emerge as members of the galactic community, you want to finish what you started." "The Velaxians are a threat," Threlix hissed. "Their technology, their knowledge, could upset the balance of power in the galaxy. The Syndicate will not allow that." "The balance of power," Sarah laughed, though there was no humor in it. "You mean Syndicate power. You mean your control over weaker species. The Velaxians could change that, could offer alternatives to the systems you exploit. That is what you really fear. Your species is young, Ambassador. You do not understand how the galaxy works. Sometimes, sacrifices must be made for the greater good." "The greater good? You speak of genocide as if it were policy." Threlix made a sound that might have been a laugh. "All great civilizations are built on the bones of lesser ones. This is the way of things. It always has been. It always will be." The channel went silent. On the view screen, the Syndicate ships began to move, their weapons charged with deadly energy. "Evasive maneuvers," Ginal commanded. "All hands prepare for combat." The Whisper of Stars was fast and agile, but it was not a warship. It had no weapons, no shield strong enough to withstand sustained assault. Against 18 Syndicate attack vessels, it had no chance. Unless help arrived. The first shots came in rapid succession. Energy beams lanced through space, striking the ship's outer hull. The vessel shuddered under the impact. Alarms screamed. Crew members held onto anything solid as the artificial gravity fluctuated. "Hull breach on Deck 7, Ginal reported. "Emergency seals holding, but we cannot take much more of this." Sarah grabbed a console to steady herself. Her mind raced through options, looking for any path to survival, but there was nothing. They were outgunned, outmaneuvered, and alone. Then Vrek pointed at the view screen. "Look." From the depths of the veil, new ships were emerging. Velaxian vessels, dozens of them. Their crystalline hulls caught the faint light of the dying stars, making them look like jewels in motion. "The Velaxians are coming to help," Mei Ling said, her voice filled with wonder. But the Velaxians were not built for war. Their ships had no weapons. They were explorers and scientists, not soldiers. What could they possibly do against the Syndicate fleet? Sarah watched as the Velaxian ships spread out, forming a pattern that seemed random at first. Then she understood. They were positioning themselves between the Whisper of Stars and the Syndicate vessels. "They are shielding us," she breathed. "They are using their own ships to protect us." The Syndicate weapons struck the Velaxian vessels. Crystal shattered. Energy rippled across hulls. Ships began to fall, tumbling through the darkness of space. But still, the Velaxians held their formation. Still, they protected the vessel that carried the first being who had ever offered them friendship. "Broadcast this," Sarah commanded. "Every frequency, every channel. Make sure the entire galaxy sees what is happening here." The transmission went out. Across the galaxy, species watched as the Velaxians sacrificed themselves to protect a human ambassador. They saw the Syndicate's true nature revealed, attacking unarmed vessels, committing murder in the depths of space. And they responded. "Ambassador," Ginal shouted. "New contacts arriving. Council fleet signatures, Corthan warships, Velorian cruisers. They are coming out of faster-than-light travel now." The view screen filled with new ships. Massive Corthan vessels bristling with weapons. Sleek Velorian craft moving with deadly grace. Ships from a dozen species, all converging on the Syndicate fleet. Syndicate vessels, a new voice boomed across the communication channel. It was Ambassador Grokter. "You are surrounded. Surrender now or face the combined might of the Galactic Council." For a long moment, nothing happened. The Syndicate ships held their positions, weapons still charged. Then slowly, they began to power down. One by one, they dropped their shields and opened communication channels. Threlix's voice came through one more time. It was bitter with defeat. "This is not over, Ambassador Chen. The Syndicate has a long memory." "So do we," Sarah replied. "And so do the Velaxians. Perhaps it is time to create new memories, better ones." The communication ended. The battle was over before it had truly begun. But the real victory was not the Syndicate's surrender. The real victory was what came next. The Velaxian ships that had survived the assault moved toward the Council fleet. There was a moment of tension as the two groups faced each other. Former enemies turned uncertain allies. Then the lead Velaxian ship broadcast a signal. It was simple, mathematical, beautiful. A sequence that translated into a single concept. "Thank you." The response came from dozens of ships, from dozens of species. Different languages, different forms of expression, but all conveying the same message. "Welcome home." Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of the damaged Whisper of Stars. Tears streamed down her face, and she did not try to hide them. Some moments were too important for dignity. Humanity had taken its first step onto the galactic stage, and that step had changed everything. 6 months had passed since the confrontation with the Syndicate of Shadows. In that time, the galaxy had transformed in ways that no one had predicted. The Velaxians had formally joined the Galactic Council. Their representatives now sat among the other 347 species, their crystalline forms catching the light as they participated in debates and votes. They had shared their knowledge freely, just as Sarah had promised they would. Energy systems based on Velaxian technology were being installed across the galaxy. Medical treatments were saving lives that would have been lost. Agricultural techniques were feeding populations that had known hunger for generations. The Syndicate of Shadows had not disappeared, but their power had diminished. Evidence of their crimes against the Velaxians had been presented to the Council. Many of their allies had abandoned them. Their seats in the chamber sat mostly empty now, their representatives unwilling to face the judgment of their peers. And humanity had earned something that could not be bought or conquered: respect. The great chamber was full for the special session. Every seat was occupied. Representatives leaned forward in anticipation. The automated announcement system chimed. "The Council will now hear the proposal from the Oversight Committee." Ambassador Zyxthon rose from his seat. His silver skin glowed with health, and his 4 eyes swept across the chamber with a warmth that had been rare 6 months ago. "Fellow council members," he began, "we gather today to recognize an achievement that has not occurred in the recorded history of our civilization. An achievement that has changed the course of galactic events and opened possibilities that we never dared imagine." He paused, letting the silence build. When humanity first joined this council 5 years ago, many of us were skeptical. They were young, we said, inexperienced. What could they possibly offer to a community that had existed for millennia before they even discovered fire? Light laughter rippled through the chamber. Zyxthon smiled. "We know the answer now. They offered something that we had forgotten we needed. They offered fresh eyes, fresh perspectives, a willingness to question assumptions that the rest of us had accepted as truth." He turned to face the human section of the chamber. Sarah Chen sat in her usual seat, with Marcus and James on either side of her. Dr. Mei Ling was there as well, along with the other members of the team that had traveled to the Veil. "Ambassador Chen," Zyxthon continued, "when the rest of us saw enemies, you saw potential friends. When we prepared for war, you prepared for conversation. When we assumed the worst, you hoped for the best. And through that hope, you accomplished something unprecedented. Ambassador Grokter rose from his seat. The massive Korthan had changed since the crisis. His aggressive posture had softened. His voice, when he spoke, was almost gentle. "My people know war," Grokter said. "We have fought and died in countless conflicts. We believed that strength was the answer to every problem. Ambassador Chen showed us that we were wrong." He turned to face Sarah directly. "You showed us that sometimes the strongest thing a warrior can do is put down their weapon." One by one, representatives from other species rose to speak. The Aquatic Consortium praised humanity's creativity. The Valorian Collective acknowledged their courage. Even species that had been hostile to humans in the past offered words of recognition and respect. Finally, the moment came. Zyxthon raised his 4 arms in the traditional gesture of formal proposal. "The Oversight Committee has reviewed the actions of Ambassador Sarah Chen and her team. We have examined the records, interviewed witnesses, and analyzed the outcomes. Based on this review, we present the following proposal to the Council." The chamber fell completely silent. "We propose that humanity be awarded champion status. This is the highest honor the Galactic Council can bestow. It has not been granted in over 10,000 years. It recognizes not just individual achievement, but the potential of an entire species to shape the future of our civilization." The murmuring began, but it was different from the usual council debates. There was no argument, no opposition, just wonder and agreement. "The vote will now take place." The automated system processed the votes in seconds. The result appeared on every display in the chamber. In favor, 345. Against, 1. Abstentions, 1. The single vote against came from the Syndicate of Shadows. The abstention came from humanity itself, following proper protocol. "The motion carries," the system announced. "Humanity is hereby granted champion status. Let it be recorded in the eternal archives." The chamber erupted in celebration. Species that had never agreed on anything cheered together. Representatives left their seats to approach the human section, offering congratulations and expressions of goodwill. Sarah stood slowly. The weight of the moment pressed down on her, but she held herself steady. When she spoke, her voice carried across the entire chamber. "Thank you," she said simply. "Thank you for giving us this chance. Thank you for welcoming us into this community. Thank you for trusting us when trust was hard to give." She paused, looking around at the gathered species. "Humanity is young. We have much to learn. We have made many mistakes in our history, and we will probably make more in our future. But we believe in one thing above all else. We believe that any problem can be solved if beings are willing to listen to each other, if they are willing to see each other not as enemies but as neighbors, not as threats but as friends." She smiled, and this time the smile reached her eyes. "The galaxy is vast. It is full of wonders and dangers, mysteries and answers. We humans are eager to explore it all, but we do not want to explore alone. We want to explore together, as partners, as allies, as fellow travelers on this incredible journey." She lifted her hand, palm outward in a gesture of peace. "Thank you for walking with us." The celebration continued long into the night. Representatives shared food and drink and stories. Species that had been at odds for centuries found common ground over shared amazement at what had been accomplished. And through it all, the Valaxians watched with their crystalline eyes. They had waited thousands of years for someone to listen. They had hidden in the darkness, afraid of the light. Now they stood in the brightest chamber in the galaxy, surrounded by beings who called them friend. One of them approached Sarah as the celebration began to wind down. It was the same Valaxian who had first welcomed her to their world. "We have something for you," the Valaxian said through the translator system. Its voice was like music, like mathematics, like hope-given sound. "A gift, to thank you for what you have done." It held out a small object, a crystal no bigger than a human thumb that glowed with an inner light. This is a memory stone, the Velaxian explained. It contains our history, all of it, the joys and the sorrows, the triumphs and the tragedies. We give it to you so that you may understand us better, so that the friendship between our peoples may grow deeper with each passing year. Sarah took the stone carefully. It was warm in her hand, and she could feel a subtle vibration, almost like a heartbeat. "I will treasure this," she said, "and I promise you the memory of what happened here, of what we accomplished together, will never be forgotten." The Velaxian made a sound that was almost certainly a laugh. "Humans," it said, "you are such interesting beings. You faced the unknown without fear. You offered friendship without conditions. You changed the galaxy without seeking power." "We did what anyone would do," Sarah replied. "No," the Velaxian corrected. "You did what no one else thought to do. That is what makes you special." Sarah looked around the chamber, at the celebrating species, at the friends she had made, at the future that lay ahead bright with possibility. "We are not special," she said softly. "We are just human, and this is what humans do." The Velaxian considered this for a long moment. Then it made another sound, one that the translator could not quite capture. But Sarah understood it anyway. It was hope, pure, simple, beautiful hope. And it was a sound that would echo through the galaxy for generations to come. The story of Ambassador Sarah Chen and the Velaxian peace would be told and retold throughout the ages. It would inspire other species to reach out to their neighbors. It would encourage dialogue over conflict, understanding over fear. It would become a legend, a myth, a beacon in the darkness of space. And it would remind everyone, from the oldest civilization to the youngest, of one simple truth. Sometimes the greatest victories are won not with weapons, but with words. Not with power, but with patience. Not with force, but with friendship. Humanity had earned its place among the stars, and the galaxy was better for it.